Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another live stream. We're a little bit delayed today, but that's okay. It's windy out here in the Permian Basin, so we're having some IT issues. I hope y'all forgive us. As you know, this month we are featuring various authors in celebration of National Literacy Month. And today we're so excited to welcome Miss Marjorie Herrera Lewis, which is the author of When the Men Were Gone. Very intriguing book.
Well, thank
A
you. It's
lot of
great to be
Texas.
here.
Hi Marjorie, we are so happy to feature you today. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So just introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. Did you grow up in Texas or do you still live in Texas?
hmm Well, actually, I wasn't born in Texas. I was born and raised in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay.
But I was 12 years old when I first came to Texas, and I fell in love with it. I thought the people were so kind and nice. And I told my parents at that time, I'm going to live with these people. So I got here in when I was 22, and I've been here ever since. As you can tell, I'm not 22 anymore, so it's been a long time. I've married and raised my daughters here. So I'm a career journalist, a sports writer in particular. I wrote for the Fort Worth Star Telegram for a number of years, and then after that, the Dallas Morning News. Back in the mid 80s, I was assigned to be the first woman to cover the Dallas Cowboys beat, so from any news entity. So as we talk about when the men were gone, you'll see how my story sort of connected with the protagonist in my novel, which is based on a true story. So I also teach. I've taught at Dallas College for a number of years, and I'm currently teaching media ethics at the University of North Texas. So that's in a nutshell. We'll get to the book, and so I'll go into the background of that at a different point. But that's what brought me to the book. That's the
A
life
little
I've
bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I am also a native New Mexican,
Oh,
and so I came to Texas through university. So, and then
okay.
I married a Texan,
Uh-huh.
and I'm here to stay probably.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
As you know, adult literacy is our primary focus here at the Permian Basin Adult Literacy Center. Why, as a teacher and as a writer, why do you think adult literacy is an important topic for you?
Oh gosh, it opens
Or
up.
literacy in general?
Yes, yes. It opens up exposure to so many different lives and areas. One day we can, like in my book, one day we can live in 1944 Brownwood, and the next day we can live in a country that we've never visited in the 1700s. And so I think literacy just opens so many doors to experiences that we might not be fortunate to have. And that's one of the reasons why I started writing as a young age, because I love reading stories of people I'll never meet, or places I'll never go. And it's just a wonderful form of art. I think of literacy as art. It's like interpreting a painting, or interpreting music. It's just another one of these wonderful gifts that it's great to engage in.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, you started out your writing career as a sports writer, correct? Is
That's
that
right.
correct? Yeah, for Dallas Cowboys and all those big sports. Texas is big on sports. What was it like working as a sports writer in a male-dominated industry?
Oh,
Is
wow. Yeah. Well,
that
I'll give you two examples that should answer that. My very first day at training camp at Thousand Oaks, California, one of the football players, when practice ended, he walked up to me and he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, "You don't belong here." And I looked at him and I thought of what I had just seen in practice. And I responded, "I'll be here a lot longer than you will." he got cut from the team the next day, and I never saw him again. But at the same time, even though it was difficult with some people, they had a problem with me. As a whole, the Dallas Cowboys didn't. And when the Cowboys played the Bears in London, and I was covering the team, when the British police officer wouldn't let me in the locker room, Tom Landry came out and said, "Marjorie, where are you?" And I said, "He won't let me in." So Tom Landry looks at the police officer and he says, "Oh, it's okay. She's one of us and she can come in." He said, "Well, she may be one of you in the United States, but she's not one of you here." See, the players, when they knew I was covering the team, so they would stay in uniform until I left the locker room. So they were there waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally, one of the other players came out and he asked me what was taking so long. And I told him what happened. So he went in the locker room, brought out all the players I needed to talk to, and I got one-on-one interviews with them. And then he went on the bus and pulled off the Chicago Bears that I needed to talk to. So we developed a wonderful mutual respect, and it was professionol, even though there were little pockets of resistance. So in order to actually tell Tylene's story with any level of authenticity, I think in retrospect, I had to experience that resistance so that I would know and understand what she went through in the 40s.
There's a misconception that women in general are not into sports. I grew up in a small New Mexico town, but football was life there, and I always enjoyed Friday night football. And so, what attracted you to sports?
My parents were both sports fanatics. I would walk in the house and every TV that they had was on a sporting event. And so when I grew up, my parents both shared that love of sports with me. Back in those days, there was a place that was called A&W, and you could go and drive up and they would bring you your mama burger and your papa burger. And my mom and I would go and listen to football on the radio, and she would explain things to me. And then my father, he was a dentist, but his undergrad work, he played baseball at St. Mary's College of California up in the Bay Area. And so I was probably 9 or 10 years old by the time I could already catch his fastball and his curved ball. And so it was just something I grew up with and I absolutely fell in love with. And it was also a father-daughter thing, a mother-daughter thing. It was something even beyond sports. It was something we shared that I'll treasure forever.
Wonderful. So was writing, whether that be, sports writing or journalism writing, was that something that you've always been passionate about as well?
Oh, absolutely. My whole life, I've been a storyteller. And then, of course, my whole adult life, I've been a writer. But when I was a little girl, my sister, there are 5 children in the family, and I have one sister that's just a year behind me. So I was always instigating all the ideas, and she would follow along with me. And one of them, when we weren't outside playing sports, I would ask her to sit with me in the bedroom and write stories. And so we would write our stories, and then we would take them to Mom, and we'd say, "Mom, which one's better?" And my mother was always so careful not to pick a favorite or anything. She'd always say, "Oh, they're both great. They're both just as good. They're the same." And I would think to myself, she's a math person. If I can't write a book better than a math person, what kind of future do I have? She went on to be a banker. Uh-huh. But we had I have so many good memories of the two of us on rainy days or really heavy snow days where it was too cold to go out, sitting in the bedroom writing stories. It was just something I've had a passion for my whole life.
And where did you come up with these ideas for your writings as a child?
Oh, just something outrageous. I've always had such a wild imagination. And so I would tell her, let's pretend that we're in New York and we have jumping shoes and we can jump and see the top floor into the all the biggest buildings and the Empire State Building. They were crazy ideas, but she always went with them, and we would just follow the prompts.
Wonderful. Well, let's talk about your book, When the Men Were Gone. It's this book centers around Texas football, the war, and strong Hispanic women, right? So, can you tell our viewers a little bit about the book? And I think we kind of know what inspired you to write the book, but talk a little bit more about that, and what inspired you to write about this particular unknown history of Texas, because I wasn't aware of this. So, and I think a lot of people are unaware of this part of history.
Well, as a journalist, I've always been drawn to writing stories that people don't know about. Something, if I'm even writing a story about the quarterback of the football team, tell me something that people don't already know. And so I had really bad allergies. And even though my doctor kept telling me to get allergy shots, I fought that for about 26 years. And then one day I walked in wearing a T-shirt walked in to get allergy tested. I finally acquiesced, and I was wearing a T-shirt of my older daughter's alma mater, and it said the University of Tulsa football. And the nurse who was going to give me the shots looked at me and she said, "A woman who loves football. I do too. It runs in the family," because my great aunt was a football coach. And I just about fainted.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So here's a story no one knows. And so I asked her all about her Aunt Tylene, and she told me she coached in Brownwood, Texas, and she coached during World War II. And it's called When the Men Were Gone because that's what happened. The men were going off to serve during the war, and they were going to cancel the football season. And Tylene didn't want the boys to go off to war when they were boys. She wanted them to stay home, do what boys do, and then when you're a man, you do what men do. So the story was about her journey to take over the team and the resistance she had, and what was the feeling among the people in town. So it's a football story, but it's also a father-daughter story. It's a story of, it's really a love story, of not in the sense that we see, not romance, but the love she had for so many people that she was willing to put her reputation as an educator on the line to take over with people for a football team when people never saw a woman on the sidelines. So so it's in a way a sort of a mini memoir, because I understood her so much, and there are a lot of life aspects in this. Now, I must say one more thing. I set out to write a biography, but a lot of her story was lost to time. So it is a novel, but it's a fictionalized accounts that I created based on what I knew to be true.
It sounds like it's also a story of resilience, being able to, recover from, and you hear a lot of those stories now too during the pandemic. It's like, okay, this didn't work, but let's try to do this, and
Yes.
of changes coming down the line as well. So you want to talk a little bit about that too.
Yes, because, why were people resistant to a woman coaching football? Well, because it was new, it was different. They weren't familiar with it. And once you become familiar with something, you become comfortable because you're not afraid of it anymore. And that was the case with Tylene. Even when I spoke to people whose family members, like a father or grandfather, had played for her, they were afraid. They didn't want to play for a woman. They thought she wasn't going to be able to give them proper instruction. And they would also be embarrassed by being on the side, having a woman on the sideline in such a man sport. And then they came to realize, wait a minute, now that they've been exposed to her and her knowledge and her passion, they didn't want to play for anybody else. So it's a story that tells people also that you could get outside of your comfort zone and you can do something that maybe you wouldn't think you had the courage to do. And I talked about this a lot in a TED talk that I gave maybe several months ago, and about not being afraid to go first, like Tylene was the first, or in my experience, being the first beat writer, female beat writer, the first, and it's kind of scary sometimes, but if you do it, as a result, not only are you personally rewarded, but the people that follow you are going to be inspired by your story, and you open up new opportunities to everyone.
Exactly. And to remain strong through the whole process, because there are going to be there's going to be resistance, but know that you're on the right path, and to remain strong, right? Through the
Yes,
process.
like you said, resilience, perseverance, there are just a lot of things, inspiration. I just really had a wonderful journey myself to discovering the story and bringing it to the public.
Perfect. Well, can you now read a selection from your book for our viewers?
All right. I picked a selection the night before the game. The Tylene wants to go down and look at the field and just sort of take in what she remembered as a child, sharing this experience with her father. And there are a couple characters I just want to mention. I'm going to mention the name John in here. John is Tylene's husband. You'll hear Bessie Lee. Bessie Lee is Tylene's sister. Shorty Wilkerson is a football player that used to make Tylene nervous when she was a little girl watching him play. And Wendell is an African American jack of all trades who works at the school with Tylene. So those are the names you'll hear, and that'll put it in context. So here we go. After I cleaned up and washed the dishes, I grabbed my purse and headed to the garage, where I found John sitting at his workbench making fishing lures, a hobby he has long enjoyed. He said it relaxed him, helped him keep his mind off of our troubles. I told John I was going to check on my mom and then stop by the football field once more just to gather my thoughts. After an hour-long visit with my parents and Bessie Lee, I pulled into the school parking lot. It was empty. I parked as close as I could to the football field, turned off the engine, and stared at the 50-yard line. I allowed myself to reminisce about what led me to this moment, about what my father had taught me. Every road in Texas leads to a football field. You pass by one, and you'd swear you can smell the leather of a well-worn helmet. You sit in the stands alone at dusk, stare at the field, and you could see the footprint of every football player who ever suited up. Some so quick they left defenders in their stocking feet. Little kids grow up watching their favorite high school team and go to bed at night dreaming of their turn to play. I took a deep breath, hopped out of the truck, walked down to the field, and paced the sideline. I then stopped and stood at the bottom of the bleachers. As the sun began to set before me, I spotted the section my father and I had sat in when he had begun teaching me the nuances of the game. The upper corner, just right of the press box. I was certain the setting sun had cast a shadow that oddly appeared to resemble the two of us. I climbed the bleachers, and as I got closer, I began to feel my father's presence, and I wished for a moment that he were there with me. I found our spot on the bleachers, sat down, and closed my eyes. In my mind, I could see the band standing at midfield playing the school fight song. I spotted my childhood babysitter, Corinne, playing the French horn. My favorite sounds began to fill my head as if I were hearing them for the first time. Here come the Brownwood Lions. I could see the boys running onto the field, hearing the cheers get louder as the team approached its sideline bench. I could see everyone standing, men in their ties, jackets, and fedoras, women in flower print dresses, heels, and straw hats, children in play clothes and saddle shoes. I saw Shorty Wilkerson and considered gnawing on my nails. Suddenly, I was startled by the sound of the field lights being turned on. I opened my eyes and saw the dim lights begin to warm up. I looked toward the field house and spotted a silhouette just outside the building's entrance. That you, Miss Tylene? Yes, Wendell, it is. I had not seen Wendell's face, but I immediately recognized his voice. After all, Wendell was the town Yankee. He used words like use instead of y'all. Or he added letters to words like washed instead of washed. Sometimes he even changed a word altogether, like when he said He preferred a ham and cheese sandwich. Didn't mean to startle you, ma'am, he said. Oh, I'm fine. Just about to leave. Well, don't rush on my account. A few minutes later, I walked down the bleachers and over to the field house. How does everything look? Wendell asked. Are you ready for the game? Oh, yes, I am, Wendell said, and I'm doing a dry run. Don't want to be surprised any come game time. I thanked him and turned away. Not 2 steps later, Wendell whispered, Miss Tylene. I turned back. They're afraid of us. They're afraid of change, he said. He smiled. Go get them. I turned back, nodded in solidarity, and headed to my truck. There you go.
Well, there we are. Well, wonderful selection. I can just the imagery. I can see our Friday night football teams on our football field. With the football players out there on the field.
Well, one bit of disclosure. She said her babysitter, Corrine, who played the French horn. I made that up. My mom's Corrine, and she played the French horn.
Oh, okay. Well, I know we talked a little bit previously about this, but what do you hope is the biggest takeaway that you want from the story that you want your readers to take away from it?
I want my readers to read this and feel inspired to take chances. I want readers to say, you know what? And let me tell you this first. I've had a lot of people. I've gone all over the country with this book. I've been on TV shows and radio and you name it. And people will come up to me in incredible numbers and tell me, I always wanted to do such and such, but I didn't when it started getting hard. I didn't persevere. But wow, what she's teaching me, and if I had the chance to do it over. So for some people, maybe the time has passed, but for some people, I hope that they say, I'm not going to let anything stop me. This is my life. I'm going to take ownership of it. And if other people have a problem with it, I'm going to just put that aside and keep my eyes straight ahead. I'm going to keep going. And one thing that I did hear too from one woman is that her daughter works in engineering in an all-male environment. And she told me, I'm getting this book for my daughter because she has no pushback. She has been completely embraced and has had no problem being an only woman in this field. And I wanted to read this so that she'll understand why. It's the people who came before her.
Fabulous. Well, what advice would you give to somebody writing their first book?
Oh, gosh. My advice is don't worry about how much you have to write before you get it right. I have to say I probably threw away 5 or 6 versions of this book from start to finish. I just tossed them away because they didn't feel right. And instead of quitting and just saying, I'm not going to get it right, you have to keep going until you get a point where you're comfortable. And then you say, okay, this feels right. This is it. So writing is hard. Writing it takes a lot of determination, it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of do-overs. So when you've written 200 pages and you feel the pain of throwing them in the shredder, that's okay. Just keep going.
Perseverance is the word of the day during this lesson, right? And it also applies to writing.
Right, absolutely.
Because I love reading, and BALC loves reading. What are you currently reading, and what are some recommendations? Reading recommendations.
Okay. I'm one of those people that has a stack of books on the end table, and I read more than one at a time, which is, it's as I get older, it's harder to keep track of which goes with which book, but I just love reading. So I have a lot of books going at the same time. If I talk about some of the traditionally known writers, and see, I was about to say artists because I think of writers as artists. Truman Capote is somebody. Then I like, I could read Breakfast at Tiffany's over and over and over and over and never get tired of it. A little more contemporary, I like Diana Gabaldon, and I like Laura Hillenbrand, and I like Lisa Wingate. They're just a lot of and I do like some of those thrillers. The traditional. Oh gosh, I read a lot of his works too, and I can't remember. The lawyer guy that always has these lawyer stories from Mississippi. In fact, one of my friends went to college with him, and now I can't even remember his name. But just I don't really have
Grisham, I think is his name.
Yes, yeah, okay, Grisham, yeah, thank you. I don't really have a favorite genre, and I also enjoy reading biographies, like Katharine Graham's biography and her journey to being publisher of the Washington Post. So, just whatever seems to be the flavor of the day.
Fabulous. Well, I will recommend to our viewers and listening and watching this that they need to add your book to their list, When the Men Were Gone. And also it would be a great book to read in celebration of National Hispanic, Latino, or Mexican American, or Chicano, whatever you want to call it, month. You add this to your list.
Well, thank you.
That's written by a Texan Hispanic writer, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So what's next? What do you have? Do you have any upcoming projects, Marjorie?
Well, I'm working on a project without giving too much away yet. I have two projects. The book that I'm working on now takes place in San Antonio in 1906. And the other project I'm working on is the film version of this book. We have the producers are on board. We have regular Zoom meetings. So it's officially in development. Yeah, so I'm excited about that. I'm working with the screenwriter as well. So I have input, and then I'll be an executive producer on the project. So those are the two big things I'm working on now.
Fabulous. And so do you have any maybe some release dates for the book, or maybe even the screenplay?
Not yet. I'm finding in terms of the film, everything takes a long time. Hollywood kind of moves at a snail's pace. But if it gets done, that's all I care. And in terms of my other novel, well, I'll give you a hint, but don't tell anybody. It's the year that Mamie Eisenhower lettered in college football. Most people don't know that we have a former first lady who lettered in college football. So and it happened in San Antonio. But I could give you a date if I were working faster, but I'm not. I've got so many things going on. So this is coming along a little bit slower, but it's still progressing, and I'm really excited about it and getting it finished. I don't know how many pages I'll still be throwing away, but at some point it'll be done.
Well, if people want to know more of where to get your current book, When the Men Were Gone, and keep up with the screenplay and the newest book, where can they find you on the internet? And we'll be posting all that information in the comments as well.
Well, MarjorieHerreraLewis.com. And that's my website. So that has a lot of information that and a lot of other media interviews and things that if they might want to look at. Also, just Google my name, and it's amazing what comes up. I don't know this computer stuff. It's crazy. But you can find the book anywhere. It's Barnes and Noble, any of your independent bookstores. It's Amazon. It should be pretty much anywhere.
Fabulous. Well, I want to thank you so much, Marjorie, again for joining us today. And make sure and check out our website to purchase the book, or for more information about Marjorie, or if you would like to book her for an interview as well. And I also want to just remind everybody about Permian Basin Adult Literacy's Readathon ends September 30th. So we would love for you to consider participating or sponsoring a student, and you can find more information on that on our website, www.pbalc.org/events, to learn more. And thank you again so much, Marjorie, for joining us and telling us a little bit about your book.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you.
Everybody, we'll see y'all next time.